To Kill a Mockingbird, Chapter 15. There was a knock on the front door. Jim answered it and said it was Mr. Heck Tate, and y'all will remember that's the sheriff. Well, ask him to come in, said Atticus. I already did. There's some men outside in the yard. They want you to come out. In Macomb, grown men stood outside in the front yard for only two reasons, death and politics. I wondered who had died. Jim and I went to the front door, but Atticus called, "Go back in the house." Jim turned out the living room lights and pressed his nose to a window screen. Aunt Alexandra protested. "Just for a second, Auntie. Let's see who it is," he said. Dill and I took another window. A crowd of men was standing around Atticus. They all seemed to be talking at once. "Moving him to the county jail tomorrow," Mr. Tate was saying. "I don't look for any trouble, but I can't guarantee there won't be any." And so what is the antecedent of him? Who are they moving to the county jail? Tom Robinson. Okay. "Don't be foolish, Heck," Atticus said. "This is Macomb. Said I was just uneasy. Heck, we've gotten one postponement of this case just to make sure there's nothing to be uneasy about. This is Saturday," Atticus said. "Trial will probably be Monday. You can keep him one night, can't you? I don't think anybody in Macomb will begrudge me a client with times this hard." There was a murmur of glee that died suddenly when Mr. Link Dees, he's one of the shop owners in town, said, "Nobody around here's up to anything. It's that old Sarum bunch I'm worried about. Can't you get what is it, Heck?" "Change of venue," said Mr. Tate. "Not much point in that now, is it?" Atticus said something inaudible. I turned to Jim, who waved me to silence. "Besides," Atticus was saying, "you're not scared of that crowd, are you?" "Know how they do when they get shinnied up." Now, shinnied, I had never heard of shinnied before I read To Kill a Mockingbird, but most people have heard of moonshine, and moonshine and shinny are alcohol. They don't usually drink on Sunday. They go to church most of the day, Atticus said. "This is a special occasion, though," someone said. They murmured and buzzed until Auntie said if Jim didn't turn on the living room lights, he would disgrace the family. Jim didn't hear her. Usually kids have selective hearing. They don't hear what they don't want to hear. "Don't see why you touched it in the first place," Mr. Link Dees was saying. And you have to understand the antecedent of it, touched it, and that would be the court case. "You've got everything to lose from this, Atticus. I mean everything." "Do you really think so?" This was Atticus's dangerous question. "Do you really think you want to move there, Scout?" Bam, 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 and the checkerboard was swept clean of my men. "Do you really think that, son? Then read this." Jim would struggle the rest of the evening through the speeches of Henry W. Grady. "Link, that boy might go to the chair." "And who is that boy?" "Tom. But he's not going till the truth's told." Atticus's voice was even, "And you know what the truth is." There was a murmur among the group of men, made more ominous when Atticus moved back to the bottom front step and the men drew nearer to him. Suddenly Jim screamed, "Atticus, the telephone's ringing!" The men jumped a little and scattered. They were people we saw every day, merchants, in-town farmers. Dr. Reynolds was there, and so was Mr. Avery. "Well, answer it, son," called Atticus. Laughter broke them up. When Atticus switched on the overhead light in the living room, he found Jim at the window, pale except for the vivid marks of the screen on his nose. "Why on earth are you all sitting in the dark?" he asked. Jim watched him go to his chair and pick up the evening paper. I sometimes think Atticus subjected every crisis of his life to tranquil evaluation behind the Mobile Register, the Birmingham News, and the Montgomery Advertiser. And y'all, why are those things italicized? Because they're titles of newspapers. Okay. "They were after you, weren't they?" Jim went to him. "They wanted to get you, didn't they?" Atticus lowered the paper and gazed at Jim. "What have you been reading?" he asked. Then he said gently, "No, son, those were our friends." "It wasn't a gang?" Jim was looking from the corners of his eyes. Atticus tried to stifle a smile, but didn't make it. "No, we don't have mobs and that nonsense in Macomb. I've never heard of a gang in Macomb. Ku Klux got after some Catholics one time." And those little dots are ellipses. I think they're probably commas, but they're supposed to be periods. I left a little part of the text out. "The Ku Klux is gone," said Atticus. "It'll never come back." I walked home with Dill and returned in time to overhear Atticus saying to Auntie, "In favor of Southern womanhood as much as anybody, but not for preserving polite fiction at the expense of human life," a pronouncement that made me suspect they had been fussing again. Jim and I were settling down to a routine evening when Atticus did something that interested us. He came into the living room carrying a long electrical extension cord. There was a light bulb on the end. "I'm going out for a while," he said. "You folks will be in bed when I come back, so I'll say good night now." With that, he put his hat on and went out the back door. Later on, I bade my aunt and brother good night and was well into a book when I heard Jim rattling around in his room. His go-to-bed noises were so familiar to me that I knocked on his door. "Why ain't you going to bed?" Now here, Jim and Scout go get Dill, and they sneak out of the house to go downtown to see what Atticus is doing. As we walked up the sidewalk, we saw a solitary light burning in the distance. "That's funny," said Jim. "Jail doesn't have an outside light." "Looks like it's over the door," said Dill. A long extension cord ran between the bars of a second-floor window and down the side of the building. In the light from its bare bulb, Atticus was sitting, propped against the front door. He was sitting in one of his office chairs, and he was reading, oblivious of the night bugs dancing over his head. I made to run, but Jim caught me. "Don't go to him," he said. "He might not like it." "He's all right. Let's go home. I just wanted to see where he was."